Welcome, everybody. I'm going to let everyone settle in here. It's your host, once again, Leo Luna, with Niner Nate, my podcast co host on the Niners Nation podcast network. How's everything going, Nate?
Going well. 6 more days. Justin Fields, no matter what, baby.
Justin Fields, no matter what. Let me know how you guys are feeling in the comment section. Are you Justin Fields, no matter what? Are you Trey Lance, no matter what? Or are you just kind of the guy in left field preaching for Mac Jones? That's fine. We accept all and everybody here on the 49ers Gold Mine YouTube channel. Even if we don't agree with you, that's fine. That's a great thing. That's a beautiful thing about sports. Right now, if you're tuned in, just go ahead and hit that like button. It costs you $0 to press like. Comment with us throughout the show. We will go ahead and answer some of these questions that you throw in the comments as well. Share to your friends, subscribe, and let's get into it. First thing we wanted to cover here was John Beck on KMBR. Kind of crazy that he took an interview before the draft. I personally thought, especially on the San Francisco flagship station, since the 49ers are picking 3, and that's kind of the biggest controversy right now in the draft is who are they selecting at 3. It seems like 1 is Trevor Lawrence, 2 is Zach Wilson, and then 3 is where everyone just puts on their foil caps and guesstimates on what that selection is going to be. But John Beck said certain things that makes me believe a certain quarterback is going to be the pick in San Francisco. Nate, I'll go ahead and kick it off to you. What are your key takeaways at John Beck interview on KMBR?
Well, I think the biggest thing that we need to that interview is so eye-opening, and I think after you texted me about it, I immediately went and listened to it. And I think when you notice that he literally doesn't say one word about Mac Jones in a 20-minute span, it just goes to show you that it's not Mac Jones. It never was Mac Jones. And I think that someone posted on Twitter today, like, they do like Mac Jones. Like, don't get me wrong, I think they like Mac Jones, but I don't think they like Mac Jones as much as they like Zach Wilson and they like Justin Fields. And then Trey Lance is that guy who's also there. If you look at the way he talks about Trey Lance in that interview, Kyle sent John Beck to Lance and said, hey, see what you can do after his first pro day. And then, we know what happened with the second pro day on Monday, obviously. And so there's conflicting reports about different things, about, how Trey Lance's, actual pro day was on Monday. But obviously, Kyle saw something to send Beck to Lance, and Beck talks about that. But then I feel like in that interview, he continuously comes back to Justin Fields over and over and over and over again. Not only the way he knows how to manipulate a pocket, the way that he can, the way his feet move, all this stuff about Justin Fields. It almost feels in that interview like he's gushing about Justin Fields. And, he talks about what Kyle's looking for. And he even states it pretty much, that Justin Fields suits everything Kyle wants to do. And so, when we keep arguing on Twitter, we keep arguing in group chats, we keep arguing constantly about who is the pick. There's only 2 people that make sense. And from that interview, there's an obvious bar that is being set that is changing. Trey Lance is here, but I think Justin Fields is here when you listen to that interview. It sounds like Justin Fields passes every single test that Kyle wants in a quarterback. It feels like Justin Fields is exactly what they're looking for. And, I just don't see any world where it's not Justin Fields 6 days from now. It just wouldn't make sense to me with the way people talk and what he's saying about Justin Fields and how he's worked with them. And then not to mention just things we've heard, through the grapevine. I mean, not to get too completely off topic, but that Mark Sanchez thing where he said about the quarterback test, and he passed higher than any quarterback ever. And then you hear Beck specifically talk about how Kyle wants a guy who's smart and knows how to, make off-schedule plays. And if Kyle messes up, then this guy helps him out and is able to, help him out when things don't always go perfect, because they don't always do. The Super Bowl, they didn't go perfect, and Garoppolo was not able to overcome that. Fields sounds like a guy who was able to overcome that, and the way that John Beck talks about it, he was glowing. That's the best word to use it. He glowed when he talked about Justin Fields.
Yeah, and with Sergio, that interview you could actually find it on Spotify, uh, Apple Podcasts. It's from KNBR themselves. So if you plug in KNBR, they'll have the title of it. It's only about like 15 minutes. The title will be John Beck. So you could find that in there. It's definitely worth a listen if it's excited about the NFL draft. Okay, so I think Alex here in the comments nailed it. It was pretty much a Justin Fields assessment. It really was, because something John Beck stated in there as well is Kyle Shanahan's big on feet, and one of the down things you hear about Trey Lance is, other than the accuracy, I think accuracy gets overblown a little bit. Or kind of just painting the picture bigger than what it actually is. But a lot of that inaccurate throws is because of the feet. The feet, they're not good. He takes a few extra steps, or he takes long steps. That's what causes him to be late. That's what causes him to be inaccurate, because the feet's not catching up with the eyes. The eyes are seeing it before the feet rather than being synced together. And when John Beck's stating that, it just hits me in the head like, okay, if Kyle's this big on feet, he probably sent John Beck over there to work with Trey Lance to see if John Beck could do something with his feet. In 2017, we were really harsh on the 49ers for not looking into Patrick Mahomes, for not looking into Deshaun Watson, and just settling on the Solomon Thomas pick. So why are we going to, bash them for not settling on Justin Fields and looking at the other talents? So that's what I take out of it. Also, something he said is to throw to all three levels of the field: intermediate, middle game, and then the deep pass. And something John Beck said was the ability to throw deep without taking extra steps. He's able to just trigger off the ball and send that missile. Does that really sound like Mac Jones? To create less of a space to throw deep. When we're talking about less of a space to throw deep, that means off-platform throws. When you think off-platform throws, does that really speak Mac Jones? I don't think so. When we're talking about off-platform throws, that's when I'll throw Trey Lance in the mix. And of course, I'll throw Justin Fields in the mix. So he mentioned those two things. Justin Fields checks the box for both of those. Mac only checks the box for the feet, and Trey Lance only checks the box for the off-platform throws. And then a lot of people say Trey Lance has the higher ceiling because he can run. He's the best runner of these quarterbacks. He can run power. He can run sweeps. With his body size being a Cam Newton-like size, he's able to do those. While Justin Fields is a gifted runner, Justin Fields isn't necessarily a guy you want running QB power, QB sweeps. So John Beck said that's not a staple of a Shanahan playbook. That's a wrinkle within Shanahan's playbook. That's something that you can throw in, maybe once a game or once every 2 games. It's just a little wrinkle in there. It's not a staple of the playbook to where you're running the ball, say, 10 times a game like Baltimore does with Lamar Jackson. And he stated the reason behind that is quarterbacks already take a beating enough from the pocket. They get beat up. So now you want him to go out and get hits like if he's on a running back. So now you're putting extra work onto your quarterback. That's not ideal in Shanahan's offense. And I kind of relate that to when he had Robert Griffin III. He was kind of forced to have those 10 carries a game in RG3 in Washington, because that was RG3's, frankly, best ability. Teams had trouble stopping it. I remember week 17, Dallas for the playoff game. How did they win that game? Because Robert Griffin III had a big run on the sideline. So John Beck said it's a wrinkle within the playbook. If it's a wrinkle in the playbook, then how higher is Trey Lance's ceiling than Justin Fields? If Kyle Shanahan's not looking to run the quarterback 10 times per game, how higher is his ceiling? Because Justin Fields could run too. He's able to throw off platform. He's able to throw through all three levels of the field. And like you said, the guy's been graded as the smartest quarterback out of this draft. And lastly, the last thing I just noted down from John Beck is John Beck said that Trey Lance should probably sit a year. Okay, so as a franchise, you're gonna invest 3 first-round picks on a guy who's likely gonna have to sit a year behind Jimmy Garoppolo, which Shanahan stated in his presser after they made that trade that Garoppolo is not happy once they made that move up to 3. Are we even sure Garoppolo's not going to force his hand and to be off this team? And also, John Beck stated, yeah, you can play Trey Lance year 1. You could call a game plan around Trey Lance's abilities, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee that it's going to translate into wins. And that's the big quote for me that it's not necessarily going to translate in wins. We're talking about John Beck, who worked with Trey Lance for 2 weeks before his pro day, stating you can start him year 1, but it's not necessarily going to translate into wins. Do you think Kyle Shanahan wants a 4th losing season out of 5 years in San Francisco? I don't think so. I really don't think so. So when John Beck, the guy who's training Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, spent a couple weeks with Trey Lance, he said he's high on Trey Lance. He's not bashing Trey Lance as a starter. He's just saying year 1 is not necessarily going to translate into wins. I think Kyle wants to win, and say you do have Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster. When does the fan base start pounding the table to put in the new shiny object? That's going to create some controversy, and I think that's drama that the front office and the head coach is probably going to want to stay away. So, what I took out of it is like Alex said in the comments, it just gave me even more confidence that Justin Fields is the pick.
I think that there's a narrative that people, I think we said it last week on the show, this narrative that radio guys seem to want Trey Lance. And I really like John Lund, and I really respect Greg Papa, and they're easily 2 of my most favorite radio hosts of all time. But the radio guys seem to be following this narrative that Trey Lance is the pick because they're going to play Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think everybody at Goldmine that I know, anyone I've talked to, believes that there's no reason to put Jimmy Garoppolo out there. And so it's weird that there's this disconnect between guys on Twitter and guys on the radio. And I just don't understand this idea that anyone thinks that Trey Lance or Justin Fields is not as good as Jimmy Garoppolo right now. We know what Jimmy Garoppolo is. He's almost 30 years old. I think he'll be 30 years old when the season starts. We know what he is. We don't know what these guys are, sure. But when you watch it and the potential is there and Kyle is there, I just don't see a world where they're picking Lance over Fields because they want to have him sit for a year. They're picking the best quarterback available at 3 because they want to go win a Super Bowl. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but they think that they have the team, the head coach, everything, that their ability to go win another Super Bowl against Kansas City or Buffalo or the Browns. I don't know. They have that ability with the quarterback. So why are we picking a quarterback based on this idea that they're going to keep Jimmy Garoppolo when Justin Fields is clearly a better player, has been graded better by everyone? Nobody has said Lance is better than Fields. I haven't heard it once. I'm actually getting really sick of hearing about how Lance is better than Fields because it makes no sense to me. I don't understand it. We've talked to a million people, me and you on my show, our show. I'm sorry, my bad. My name's on the show. I keep saying my show. Our show. We talked to guys like Tim Jenkins, former quarterback. We've talked to Alex Rollins, who covered all these quarterbacks for his own draft. We talked to all these guys, and nobody, not one person, has said Trey Lance is better than Justin Fields. So why is this narrative coming out that people think that Trey Lance is better than Justin Fields? It makes no sense to me. Why would you take Trey Lance over Justin Fields because you think Jimmy Garoppolo deserves to start again? Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't earned anything. He's been hurt 2 years out of his out of his whole contract. Like, why are we catering to a guy who literally quit on his workouts? It's just getting really sickening to me that we're completely always like, oh, it's Lance. It's Lance. It has to be Lance because of this, because of Jimmy Garoppolo.
Mhm.
That makes no sense to me. I'm really sick of hearing it, personally.
First off, I love that rant.
Sorry if I swear. Sorry if I sweared. I don't think I did, but I'm just being sorry.
I don't really care. But unless obviously it's a family show, and if there's kids here, we do apologize. But with saying there's no guarantee that number 10 is going to be the starter this year, look at the previous history. Where has Jimmy Garoppolo been with this time of the offseason? He's been in Nashville throwing routes. He even did it last year during COVID when somebody, who was it? I think it was Debo Samuel or Rich James, test positive while they were in Nashville working out. Did it the year before coming back from his ACL. Did it the year before that, Jimmy Garoppolo C. So there's no guarantee that he's on this roster. No matter what they say, at the end of the day, it's a business. And if you get a contract you like, or not a contract, if you get a trade offer that you like, you're going to take that trade offer. So since you went on your Trey Lance route, go ahead.
We continuously talk about, those workouts, right? And how people kept getting hurt. What do you think the reason for getting hurt? You think it's just because they haven't worked out in a while? These guys are professional athletes. They are fit. They are more fit than we will ever look in our entire lives. I think that the reason we're seeing so many injuries is because Jimmy Garoppolo, even in practice, is throwing hospital balls. And I think that there's a lot of us at Goldmine that believe that. I think Javi has said that on his own show before. And so this idea that he's throwing hospital balls in practice is actually hurting us long term. It just doesn't make sense to me. I just don't understand why we're giving hospital ball man a shot over a rookie quarterback, who could potentially take us to a Super Bowl in the next 2 years.
Right. So since you went into your Trey Lance talk, let's talk a little bit about the Trey Lance. He's what some of us call it is Trey Lance week. He had the most recent pro day. So it seems like the media goes with the guy who had the most recent pro day. First, it was Mac Jones. Then it was Justin Fields. And now it's Trey Lance who had the most recent pro day. I'm going to say that, Peter Schrager, Tom Pelissero, Rich Eisen, among others, are on the Lance train. Schrager actually said that Lance is the smartest quarterback in the room. Rich Eisen was saying that he fields calls, and when he's fielding those calls, he's hearing Trey Lance. So, what's your thought on this? Because what I'm thinking is it just seems like whoever has the most recent pro day is going to be the guy that they mock there at 3.
There's one thing I want to mention real quick as we get into this. When we look at the Vegas odds after Justin Fields' pro day, the Vegas odds went to Justin Fields, right? Trey Lance has his pro day. The odds went up, right? But Justin Fields is still the number 1 overall favorite, and there's a reason for that. But then with this Lance stuff, I think it's literally just the clicks are there because you have these pro days. People watch the pro days. They go, they look up stuff on Twitter. They read about how the pro day went, and then from there, they then report, oh well, the guy they were at the pro day, that's going to be the new quarterback. And I just don't think anybody actually knows. I think that the quarterback collective guys know, because the quarterback collective guys are the guys that Shanahan has sent out, like John Beck, guys who have been sent out to go scout these quarterbacks for Kyle. I think they know. But I think they've been so tight-lipped about it. I think that nobody actually knows. And so Rich Eisen's like, well, Trey Lance's pro day was this weekend, so I'm just going to say it's Trey Lance this week. And then Schrager, he said Mac Jones like 3 days, and then 2 days later, it's Trey Lance. I just feel like it's so flip-floppy all the time. And that's why I tried to, with the way I've talked on Twitter and the way that we've talked on our show, is to remain consistent. I've never wavered off it being Justin Fields, ever. Because it doesn't make sense for it to be anybody else. I like Trey Lance. I think he's a good kid. I think he could be really good with Atlanta. I think he could be really good with Denver as long as they, give him time. But it's always been Justin Fields for me. And it's always been Justin Fields because I don't take throwing in shirts and shorts to change Kyle's mind completely. I think that it's an important part of this draft process because of COVID and all this stuff. But Kyle, when he got back from his vacation to Cabo after the season ended, he looked at these quarterbacks and he said, well, I like Mac Jones because of this. I like Justin Fields because of this. And I like Trey Lance because of this. But he made a decision and picked a guy and had that guy picked since drafted. Can things change? Yeah, sure. But I think that when you watch the body language and you watch the way Kyle is with Justin Fields, that's the pick. And that's been the pick. And they went to Trey Lance as a courtesy to see what was there and to see if it wowed them. I don't think it wowed them. And I think that, he's not telling anybody it didn't wow me. He's not telling Schrager. He's not telling Tom Pelissaro. He's not being telling Rich Eisen, hey, Trey Lance didn't wow me. So that they just assume. And it's an assumption. And you know what they say about assuming, right? I'm not going to say
I think it makes an A out of you and me.
Yeah,
just in case if there's any young ones watching, and it makes an A out of you and me.
These guys are going to be wrong in 6 days, and they're going to look stupid. But it doesn't matter because they can afford to look stupid. They're paid millions of dollars, to look stupid and then still do it again. So.
Right, and it's also, part of the throw me a bone business. Project my guy. Here, I'll take care of you next time you come out, at here. I got you on a steak dinner, wherever you want. It's just one of those throw you a bone business. And like you said, those guys could afford to be wrong on their mocks, on their projections. They do it like Rexy Superman said here, is a lot of it is for clicks. It's I think I tweeted this out earlier today. It's like ESPN getting all laughing, excited that they're getting all this engagement for saying Mac Jones is going to be the pick at 3. In reality, Mac Jones probably isn't going to be the pick at 3. I just don't see it. And with Trey Lance, he's a project, and with projects, there's no guarantee that it turns out correctly. When they made the trade for Jimmy Garoppolo and gave up a second-round pick, Jimmy Garoppolo was essentially a project as well, with his limited amount of starts. In fact, they paid that project, and while Jimmy Garoppolo did have a good 1 year, I think you can consider this project a failure because it has limited your cap. Since it limited your cap, you had to trade away DeForest Buckner. If you didn't have that quarterback making that much money, I fully do believe that DeForest Buckner would still be a part of this team, but he's not. So that's why I would call it a failure project, and I don't think Shanahan wants to go through 2 projects. And it's just going to stick with me. John Beck saying that Kyle is big on the feet, and for the people saying it's going to be Trey Lance, watch the tape, look at his feet. It's not good. And if Kyle is that big on the feet, he can take Trey Lance. And also, he said, after they made that trade on the Monday, I am comfortable with 3 quarterbacks. I have to get comfortable with the other 2. The 3 quarterbacks, in my opinion, is Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, and Justin Fields. Who's the other 2? Mac Jones and Trey Lance. You're trying to get comfortable with Trey Lance by sending John Beck out there to see if his feet really are that bad, or if it's something that can be fixed within a couple workouts. He's comfortable with Justin Fields. A lot of people say, hey, what if the Jets take Justin Fields? Well, he's comfortable with Zach Wilson as well, because he said it himself. I'm comfortable with 3, and I have to get comfortable with the other 2. So if you're already comfortable with Justin Fields, that's going to be your pick. So with the people that are projecting Trey Lance, they're just trying to big brain it. They're looking at the guy in Buffalo saying, maybe Trey Lance could be him in year 3, year 4. It's not really that easy. Half of these quarterbacks are going to be successful. And I think the number 1 quarterback is going to be Trevor Lawrence. I think he'll be fine with the Jaguars. I'm not saying they're going to be a playoff team every year, year in, year out, but I believe he's a guy who could lift that organization, at least put them in a position, a better position than they would be without him, or say an average quarterback, or even Minshew. I would say Minshew's an average quarterback. Trevor Lawrence is going to excel them above that. With Justin Fields, you put him in San Francisco, I think he's going to be the other quarterback that's going to be successful. You're talking about a Shanahan offense. You're talking about a guy who throw off platform. He can run the bootleg. He's athletic, throw to all three levels of the field. I think he's the other guy who's successful. So then we're talking about, okay, who's not successful? Maybe Zach Wilson's not going to the New York Jets just based on the history of that organization. Maybe not. I like the prospect, but nobody's bust proof. We've established that throughout all our years watching the NFL. Nobody's bust proof. Trey Lance, who knows? He's a project, and if he ends up into the wrong organization, that project may not work out. With Mac Jones, if he doesn't end up with the right offense that has a good offensive line, that doesn't have good receivers, maybe he doesn't work out. But I think the two that I will pencil in as far as being successful in the NFL, that I could almost say guarantee that they would be successful in the NFL, would be Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. It's so rare. I don't think it's ever happened to where a draft has went 5 for 5, or it's had 5 all-pro quarterbacks go in the first round. Two of these guys are never going to see an all-pro season. And I think you got to go with a guarantee, which that guarantee is Trey Lance, not Justin Fields.
The person in the comments said, nobody is Jets proof.
Nobody's Jets proof. So that's why it's like, I look at the organization. I like the coaching staff. But the Jets are the Jets. So we'll see. And like, he could have a fine career, but whether you can consider it, say, better than Justin Fields, I don't think so if Justin Fields becomes a Niner. To jump to the next topic, since we're talking Justin Fields and we're very confident in it, Matt Barrows of The Athletic, I'm sure a lot of you have heard the name. Barrows stated that he spoke with 4 agents that have no connection to these quarterbacks. He made that clear because he didn't want to make it seem like he's getting like firsthand information, basically. So spoke to 4 agents that have no connection to these quarterbacks or to the teams that are looking to take one early. All 4 said Fields. Is there any significance in those agents saying Fields? Obviously, they're unnamed agents, so we don't know who they are. So is that significant, or is it just more guessing, like, say, Peter Schrager, Tom Pelissero, and Rich Eisen have done with guessing Trey Lance?
Leo, we've talked a lot about this. When we're not on camera, we're not recording, I think we have a lot of conversations on and off the pod. And I think since this whole thing started, there has been a clear and obvious narrative that has made sense from the start, right? So, yes, we can talk about Mac Jones, we can talk about Trey Lance, hell, we can even talk about Zach Wilson. But at the end of the day, if we're using our brains, just thinking normally, thinking just how of a football fan, a Niner fan, someone who understands what the hell's going on. Trevor Lawrence was always going number 1 because he was touted as being the next Andrew Luck, right? Always number 1. The Jets were, it was always Jets, Jaguars for Trevor Lawrence, right? Zach Wilson basically people talked him into the stratosphere. And he may live up to that, he may not. Zach Wilson was always going to, right? So the draft starts at 3, right? That's the idea. The draft starts at 3. When you think about it as just someone with a brain, and you think about these quarterbacks, and you think about just Shanahan, I don't see Mac Jones as being the pick at 3 because you don't trade three first-round picks to go get Jimmy Garoppolo again, right? So we X out Mac Jones. Gone. Trey Lance and Justin Fields, right? Justin Fields plays for one of the greatest schools in the history of college football. But their route tree seemed to be a little questionable, whatever, right? But he's athletic. He has a great ball, all that stuff, right? Trey Lance played 1 season for a school that plays against the Jefferson State Penguins. Also has some accuracy problem. Kyle's also not as familiar with him as he is Justin Fields because if you go on the Quarterback Collective website, it is very, very obvious that Justin Fields is the star pupil of the Quarterback Collective in the history of that organization. Justin Fields is probably the most important quarterback they've ever trained. It seems like it. At least the website kind of tells that story, right? So then you think with your brain, okay, well, Trey Lance is very interesting, right? Very fun, could potentially be really good, could potentially have Mahomes-like qualities. His accuracy is a problem, but so was Mahomes. Justin Fields is a quarterback who is very familiar with Kyle, very familiar with Kyle's system, knows Kyle Shanahan perfect. He's known him for a long time. Justin Fields' parents have talked to Kyle Shanahan before this season. They know each other. It was very obvious they know each other when you see that video of them talking. Those are two people who are familiar with each other. Those aren't people who are meeting each other for the first time. So then you think with your brain, well, who makes the most sense for the 49ers? It was always Justin Fields. It's been Justin Fields since the day the trade was made. That's the quarterback that makes the most sense. Could they pull a weird thing and it be someone else? Of course. Of course they could somehow go get, it could somehow be Trey Lance. There's always a chance. But when you think about this from the start, almost a month and a half ago, as soon as I realized that and was told that Zach Wilson is a Jet, I locked on to Justin Fields. And I'm pretty sure Kyle did too. And I think he's given the other guys a chance, like you said just now. He was confident with 3 guys. He had to get confident with the other 2. I don't think Mac Jones ever got confident with him because he didn't send Beck to him. And he also didn't meet with Coach Nick Saban. He also didn't meet with his parents. So Mac Jones has been gone for weeks. I think that conversation about Mac Jones is stupid. But Trey Lance was a very real possibility. And yes, Trey Lance parents have met with Kyle. But I think it's always been Fields. From the start of this whole circus, it's always been Justin Fields. And anyone with a brain can see it when you just think logically about this whole situation and what has led up to here. And that's why agents are saying it's Fields, because it makes the most sense.
Yeah. So I'm just going to filter through some of the comments here. Don't hate Jimmy. He's coming back healthy and strong. I don't hate Jimmy.
He's coming back healthy and strong for the Bears. He's not going to be a 49er.
Like, I don't hate Jimmy at all. I just think he's average, and apparently the organization felt the same way, because if he was anything more than that, I think they would have stuck on to Jimmy and not invest the future, invest the house to move up to go get their guy. They would have, if someone fell to them at 12, they may have took it. But I think they agree that he's average as well. That's why he made the move. Like when Matthew Stafford, for the first 4 or 5 years of his career, was injured almost every single season, what did the Lions do? The Lions stuck with him, and they actually gave him a new contract. So I think it's just a little different when you believe in a guy, and I think the organization lost some trust. I can't remember who said it, but there was something said that some people within the organization felt like Jimmy was the reason why they lost the Super Bowl. I think it was a whole team collapse. I don't think it was just Jimmy. So I'm not going to agree with that. But and Kenny said here is that you can't just ignore the idea Shanny wouldn't make that trade for Mac just because you wouldn't. There are people who like Mac more, and I agree with that. Like I wouldn't say, like, if Shanny made that move for Mac, fine. But I look at it as a football perspective, like an organization perspective. If Mac was your guy, you probably could have went somewhere else than going 3. You could have probably paid less for Mac because Mac wasn't going to go that early. If the 49ers valued him higher than other teams, okay. But yeah, I just go back to Kyle saying he felt comfortable with 3. And he has to get comfortable with the other 2. I really believe Justin Fields is that 3rd guy because he's worked with Justin Fields in the past rather than having no history with Mac Jones. If he has no history with Mac Jones, how is he going to be comfortable with him?
One thing on that real quick. Just think about this real quick. And I know we talk smack on the mock draft guys, and sometimes they do know stuff. Sometimes it clicks, right? Mm-hmm. We talked about on our show Mac Jones at 12. Before that, had anyone ever mocked Mac Jones at 12? Anyone? Think of anyone. Did anyone mock Mac Jones at 12? No, they didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't. Nobody did. And so now people are like, well, as soon as they trade to 3, it's Mac Jones. When we didn't even mock him at 12? Like, what are we doing? Like, it's all been for clicks the whole time because Mac Jones is not who Kyle wants. It's just the Mac Jones comp and the Mac Jones, just the talk about Mac Jones has been lazy. And it's actually made me like these guys a lot less because I felt like, why are we talking about Mac Jones when he was never mocked at 12 and he was going 15 to the Patriots? Like, what are we doing? That all of a sudden now we're at 3. It's Mac Jones when an absolute star with the potential to run this freaking league is there at 3 in Justin Fields. Hell, even Trey Lance could be a star in Kyle Shanahan. Like, it just makes no sense and it's lazy. Sorry. I don't want to interrupt you, but when you posted that comment, I had to say
Yeah, and also, I'm not writing Trey Lance off the board. I just don't think it's Trey Lance. By putting the puzzle pieces together from different interviews from guys that know Shanahan a lot more than I do, and also just watching his tape a little more. I can be completely wrong, and that's fine if Trey Lance is the pick, because I would be all on board with supporting Trey Lance as the quarterback. That's fine. I just don't see it. And it wasn't as soon as the trade was done. It was a couple weeks, and then he had Trey Lance work with John Beck, and John Beck is a piece of the evaluation 100%. That's the reason why I'm talking about John Beck so much. But John, at the end of the day, John Beck is not the end all be all. So, and it also depends on the report that he gets back from John Beck as well. And with Trey Lance, it's John Beck's at his feet. Trey Lance doesn't have good feet, and you could see it. You could even see it from. You don't even need the game film. Just go on YouTube and you could probably find it from there. But if it is Trey Lance, that's fine. I'll support Trey Lance. That's cool. I just don't think he's the pick. And with those agents, the agents tend to have, whether they're involved with these quarterbacks or not. In this situation that Matt Barrows talked to, they're not involved with these quarterbacks. They do tend to have some information because agents, they do talk to each other. So I'm gonna take them guessing that it's Trey Lance. I'm gonna hold that a little more weight than a Peter Schrager, because Peter Schrager has a producer on NFL Network that want them to talk about certain things, that want them to cater to certain storylines so that they can get more clicks and views. So I tend to shy away from those opinions unless it's someone that's completely genuine, like a Mina Kimes. It seems like when she talks, she sells it and she's good at what she does. With the Peter Schrager, he is more of a face that's going to get you views, that's going to get you clicks, and he's willing to take on different roles and put on different hats, and he's completely fine with. Obviously, he just changed his pick from Mac Jones to Trey Lance within a matter of 2 days. We're talking about 48 hours. Yep. He's already jumped from one ship to the other. So I think for me, agents, they hold more weight than TV personalities that are on major networks, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that as a sports fan, or a football fan, or a Niner fan, you need to look at who's saying stuff. The people who are getting paid millions of dollars to do content versus the people doing thousands versus the people being paid hundreds. So when you look at the millions of dollars, that was Mac Jones, right? You get to the $1,000 guys, I think Paige, I think her name is, I want to say it wrong, I'll butcher her name, sorry. Paige Dacamos or something like that. She works with Matt Miller. They do a show. Mm-hmm. She mocked Fields today. And so, it comes down to the kind of people you're looking for content from. And some people are just, saying it out their butt, right? But the people who actually care about this and do a lot of research and aren't just doing it for clicks and are trying to be right, because, in the end of the day, some of these guys want to be right because their job is hinging on it. Peter Schrager's job is not hinging on getting pick 3 right. But,
no.
Paige, whatever her last name is, might be because she's newer. She's getting paid a little bit more. She works for a smaller outlet. The Draft Network guys, the PFF guys, some of the smaller guys who, sure, they're still making money off this stuff, but their lives aren't hinging on getting this right. People are going to come back and get them if they're wrong. Peter Schrager doesn't care. He's just going to block you on Twitter. And so that's the thing, is the guys who seem to be in the know, who are, lesser known, tend to be the guys who are, mocking Fields because it makes sense. It's made sense since the beginning. There's never been a time where it didn't make sense. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree completely with Tyler Weber here. I don't get the hype with Lance. the he has the highest ceiling feels lazy. If it's not Fields, I'll be pretty disappointed. I'll be disappointed as well if it's not Fields because I really do want Fields to be the pick
Yeah.
because I think he's the better quarterback and the highest ceiling. What does that matter? Like, I feel like that's a thing. Well, don't get me wrong. Like, yeah, ceiling does matter, but at the end of the day, like, what was Tom Brady's ceiling? What was Drew Brees' ceiling coming into the draft? So we could all paint ceilings, but sometimes they get exploded through. But with saying that with Trey Lance, what does he do? What does he provide that Justin Fields does not provide? There's nothing. There's nothing. The only thing that he provides that Justin Fields doesn't provide is running quarterback power, running quarterback sweeps, and having these designed quarterback runs for 10 times a game. That's the only thing he provides over Justin Fields because he has a better body built for that than Justin Fields. And Justin Fields has no slouch of a body. He's just not built as much as Trey Lance, where Trey Lance looks like a middle linebacker in the NFL. Yet, how much do you value those quarterback design runs in a Shanahan run offense that John Beck stated himself are wrinkles in the offense? They're not things that you design for 10 times in a game. So if we're talking about that, Fields is definitely the better fit here for the 49ers. He has the bigger ceiling for the 49ers because he is the better pocket passer than Trey Lance at the moment. Can Trey Lance surpass him? Sure. Who the hell knows? We'll find out in 5 to 10 years. But as of right now, Justin Fields is the way safer pick than going with the project. He has better footwork. He has better mechanics. With Justin Fields, they talk about him dropping his arm a little bit too low. Well, Trey Lance has about the same exact throwing motion. I'm going to go with the quarterback who has the better timing. That's Justin Fields. And when we're talking about ceiling, the only thing I could think of that Lance has the edge on Fields is just running quarterback power, quarterback sweep. But guess what? Shanahan's not going to want to do those 10 times a game. So at this point, why the hell does it matter?
It's just lazy, dude. Like it's lazy to be like, well, I want the guy that could start later on instead of the guy who could start now because you want to watch Jimmy Garoppolo play again. It's so stupid, and the highest ceiling take is so bad, and it's been bad since the whole start. It's like, yes, I think Trey Lance is a good quarterback. I think he has the potential, but why on earth would you ever put your bet or hinge your bet on this idea that they want a guy who isn't as good right now? I just don't understand that. Because you want to watch Jimmy Garoppolo play football? I don't want to watch Jimmy Garoppolo play football ever again. Personally, I don't want to see it. And if picking Trey Lance over Justin Fields means I have to watch Jimmy Garoppolo play football again, I don't want Trey Lance anywhere near this team. And I like Trey Lance. I think he's a good kid. But when you're picking a kid who is still a year off versus a kid who can come in right now with all these one-year contracts and with this D-line that is going to be insane. Like, we're not even going to get time to talk about this D-line today. This defensive line is insane. And it's going to be insane again. Like 2019 insane. And this, yeah, the secondary is worse. But you bring Justin Fields into this team, the sky's the limit. Because if he plays anything like Justin Herbert, this is a Super Bowl team. Like, it's that simple. And Trey Lance just, I don't understand. I just don't understand wanting to watch Jimmy Garoppolo play football again. I just don't get it. I don't get this argument that people have on Twitter that Jimmy Garoppolo makes the team a Super Bowl contender. I just don't understand it, man. It's crazy to me. It's been the most crazy thing about this trade ever since the day this trade was made. Well, Jimmy's going to be our starter. Why? We're going to pay a guy $26,000 to $26 million to ride the bench for 6 games at the end of the season because he gets beat out. What are we doing? What on earth are we even doing anymore talking about Jimmy Garoppolo when we have a kid like Justin Fields waiting to take over the roster? I don't get it.
Yeah, and as Eddie pointed out here, we don't even really know Lance's floor, which it could. What I would say his floor could be is maybe like a Jake Locker, someone who has that athleticism, has a good size, and has a good arm. Just didn't work out for Jake Locker in the NFL like many people thought, especially the Tennessee Titans. But I'm completely on board with Matt here. While I am definitely a Justin Fields stan, as you guys could tell. I just think he's a better prospect. I think he's a better quarterback, and I think he's the better fit for Kyle Shanahan. Hashtag anyone but Mac. Completely on board with that. And we'll see. We'll see. We're almost going to wrap this up here soon, just to give you guys a heads up. We're going to talk a little bit about non-quarterbacks because I'm sure, we spent about 45 minutes on it so far. So let's talk about it.
Okay.
It's Kyle Pitts. This came out today, actually. Kyle Pitts said, when the 49ers initially moved up, he thought it was going to be for him. I don't know where in the wild mind of Kyle Pitts thought the 49ers were going to invest 3 first-round picks on him. But that's what he thought initially. But if the 49ers were to pick something else other than a quarterback, like it could not be a quarterback here, and they had to select a player, what position and what player are you taking at that 3rd overall? Let's ignore the 3 first, like the trade up. Let's just say that they naturally sat at 3. You cannot take a quarterback. Based on how this roster is currently built, who are you taking?
This is hard. Can I pretend they didn't pay Trent Williams?
You can, you could take a tackle and then
I would take
say
a tackle
trade off Mike McGlinchey, maybe. Like
I mean,
that could be your point.
I would say you take Penei Sewell and you trade away Mike McGlinchey.
Okay.
It's not sexy, it's not fun, but like, if we're gonna throw Jimmy Garoppolo out there, you might as well protect him because he's gonna get hit no matter what because he stands in the pocket like an idiot throwing hospital balls. And I'm just gonna come off as a hater, I know I am, but like, I if it's not quarterback, this team would be in so much trouble. Like, it's so crazy how much trouble they would be in if they weren't taking a quarterback this year. And so I'd go Penei Sewell. Can you trade back to 12 and go get Azeez Al-Jawari or something like that? But yeah, I would trade Mike McGlinchey and take Penei Sewell to protect Jimmy Garoppolo.
That makes sense. Obviously, on the protect Jimmy Garoppolo part, I would keep Mike McGlinchey here. Because I'm going to take the exact guy that we have here scrolling on the bottom of the screen. I'm taking Kyle Pitts. The reason why is I don't think Mike McGlinchey is that bad, frankly. I think a lot of it was just awful timing on his part when to give up these pressures and sacks. But with Kyle Pitts, what he could do to this offense, Kyle loves running 22 personnel to where you have 2 running backs and 2 tight ends on the field at once. So Kyle Pitts can give you that. And yet, what DB is going to be able to guard Kyle Pitts? What safety is going to be able to guard Kyle Pitts? And Kyle Pitts is a great catcher as far as like making adjustments to catch the ball. It's not necessarily things that have to be right in his numbers to catch it. He's able to, go up to catch them. He's able to get contested ones. I've seen him make one-handed catches. So it's, if we're going to say no quarterback here at the number 3 pick and you had to take a different position, I'm going to take Kyle Pitts because I think he would excel this offense. And that's where they struggled last year. The defense was a top 5 defense. The offense was the one that was struggling. So I'm going to try to go do what the Dallas Cowboys did and go put up 40 points a game. And hopefully the 49ers defense will be able to hold a lot better than the Cowboys defense did. And I think it could translate into wins. And like, look at your offense. Who's going to be able to guard Ayuk, Samuel, Kittle, and a Kyle Pitts in there? My gosh, it would just be so dirty. It would be so lethal. They're putting up 35 points a game that year with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback. They're putting up 35 points a game by adding Kyle Pitts. Obviously, you got to go, long-term here and take a quarterback at 3. But this is just for fun. If it's a non-quarterback, who would you take? Let me know in the comments as well, guys.
And the one thing is, I think Kyle Pitts would be fun. But the one thing that would be nice is, not having to pay Mike McGlinchey whatever money that you'd have to pay him. And I do like that by you. I do like that by you.
But obviously, I'm not going to go with the same pick. You know, we got to express our options here.
I totally agree with you on Kyle Pitts. It'd be so fun, like even with Jimmy Garoppolo, because I think that Kyle Pitts is like similar to Kittle, what he is right now, but he's coming out of college like that to the point where you're going to have 5 years of that, and it's going to be insane. And I think that what it does for that offense would be nasty. But like I said, I don't want to watch Jimmy Garoppolo.
Oh, Nick, you're just going straight to my heart right here. Pitts and then grab Najee. My gosh.
Trade with the Baltimore Ravens at 31.
Jesus, Pitts and Najee. Jeez. Okay, now we're talking 40 points a game at that juncture. Let's go. Last topic here. Bigger draft need, because it's been a topic. Bigger draft need. Cornerback, because when you look at, it's very thin depth at the cornerback position. You have Emmanuel Mosley, and then you have Jason Verrett, and then you have K'Wan Williams as your nickel corner. And then it gets tricky. Like, do you trust anybody else to go ahead and spot for one of those three guys? Or wide receiver? Because you have Deebo Samuel, you have Brandon Ayuk, and then it gets thin. Maybe you could say Richie James Jr. Maybe. He did have that 182 game against the Green Bay Packers. But it's very thin there as well. Like, you have Mohamed Sanu. What version are you going to get? He didn't even make the roster last year, and they decided to go with River Craycraft instead. So, like, what version of Mohamed Sanu are you getting? River Craycraft, I already said his name. You get Travis Benjamin back. What's a bigger need? Because, in my opinion, I think they're both needs.
Yeah, the lazy answer to this is to say both, because they're both huge needs. But I think that in the case of me making the case for us drafting Justin Fields at 3, I think that the bigger need is wide receiver, because non-running back Deebo is going to be super fun. Very excited about that. I think the most exciting thing about trading to 3, besides the fact that you're going to get a stud quarterback, is the fact that Deebo Samuel is going to get to be Deebo Samuel. He will not be running back Deebo Samuel, which is really exciting. But I think that the other important factor is, Ayuk is already a star, I think we've said it a million times. Ayuk's a star. Kittle's a star. And I think that they're going to use Charlie Warner a little more. And I think they like Ross Dwelly, and I think that's great. But I think another wide receiver to give Justin Fields options, because these guys are going to be scheme wide open because it's Kyle Shanahan, is going to help him out if he's a stud, like the Moores, Elijah Moore, Rondale, one of those guys, I think would be huge for Fields' development on this team, but Fields' ability to constantly score on every single time he gets the ball. Because when you play the Seahawks, who, by the way, I just want to talk smack real quick. They suck, minus Russell Wilson. They're terrible. That roster is awful. You think that defense is going to be able to defeat us if we have Rondale Moore, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Justin Fields, Kittle, and Ross Dwelly? Hell no. We're going to score points on them every single time, no matter how loud those stupid fans are. And so when you bring in another wide receiver, the ability to score points and the fact that your defensive line is so stacked and so much depth, I think, corners will not need to be all pros. You won't need to have, Jalen Ramsey out there all the time. I think that you can settle, with Emmanuel Mosley and Jason Verrett and, hopefully a drafted guy in the later rounds. And then, they have depth. It's not terrible. But the thing is if they can score 30 to 40 points on everybody they play, that defensive line is going to get to the quarterback. And I think that's going to help those cornerbacks and those safeties out a lot, where I think wide receiver would be bigger because of the fact they're drafting quarterback at 3.
This is also big. June 1st, the second free agency that's been stated, because there's going to be a lot of contracts that are going to be kicked off the books, especially if teams do. This is a very deep wide receiver class. This is a very deep cornerback class. If teams end up getting a guy that they like, that they didn't think they were originally going to get, they could certainly get one of these guys that end up on the market in the second free agency. But I'm going to go with the bigger need being cornerback. Mainly because Jason Verrett has had injury history in his career. Granted, he was healthy last year. That's great. I hope that continues. Just in case if it doesn't, I'm going to give myself a cornerback here, the edge on far as the bigger need, because there is guys I do want that are going to be in that second to third round tier. at the cornerback market. I'm talking about like Benjamin St. Juice, Paulson Adebo. So some of those guys, maybe get one of the Georgia corners like Tyson Campbell. I like him as well. So it's very interesting to see where those cornerbacks are going to go, because there tends to be a streak of a certain position at any given time in the draft. It happens in fantasy football if you want to relate it to yourself personally. So I think you got to get one of those guys in the second to third round. While I do think you can sit on the wide receiver position because it's not as much of a priority, and what you get in the draft also reflects that. You could get guys like, say, Amari Rogers, a Dwayne Eskridge from West Michigan. You could get a Shai Smith from South Carolina. You get Austin Watkins from UAB. Tamarian Terry, who's like 6'5", but runs a 4.4. You get him out of Florida State. Sage Surratt from Wake Forest. Daz Newsome from North Carolina. There's a lot of wide receivers they're going to be there for day 3. And I think if you get a Justin Fields, get a quarterback like Justin Fields, he is supposed to elevate your wide receiver core. Is Brian Pringle that good from the Kansas City Chiefs? No. Does Patrick Mahomes make him look good at times? Yes. Does Demarcus Robinson, is he good from the Kansas City Chiefs? No. Does Aaron Rodgers make him look good at times? Yes. Is Marquez Valdez-Scantling any good from the Packers? No. Does Aaron Rodgers make him look good at times? Yes. Do we see is Scotty Miller of the Buccaneers good? No, he's not. But does Tom Brady make him look good? Yes. So we see the trend here as far as elevating wide receivers based on the quarterback you have in your system. And I think if you have Justin Fields, maybe we get a better version of Richie James Jr. with Justin Fields there as the starting quarterback. Add on to a rookie, add on to maybe a veteran wide receiver that you could possibly get in the second wave of free agency. So Justin Fields, you draft him that early, you give up all that investment because he elevates your team. So you ideally want that to elevate your wide receivers directly. If Samuel goes down, I think Rich James Jr. is good enough with a quarterback like Justin Fields that can stretch the ball down the field. I think Richie James Jr. is enough to spot start for a Deebo Samuel or a Brandon Ayuk. He actually did it last year and put up 183 when he got the targets that Ayuk was supposed to get. So I think there is a need at both of these positions, but the cornerback just holds more weight for me. It just holds more weight for me.
I agree with you. I think that you're right about, there being this idea that a quarterback elevates wide receivers is really interesting. And I think that I hope that Justin Fields or Trey Lance is able to elevate those wide receivers. But, rookies, it's always kind of weird. I don't know how much Herbert really elevated his receivers last year. I think Herbert's just a stud. But I think that, ideally that's what happens, and they could go grab guys in the later rounds. But I just want Justin Fields to have the most soft landing spot possible. That's what I want. I want him to have the most soft landing spot possible where, sure, they only make the playoffs this year, but next year it's Super Bowl because they were this good. They were, Justin Fields has made that step halfway through the season or whatever, And thank you, appreciate it. But yeah, I just feel like keeping this quarterback happy and putting him in a great position is the best thing the 49ers can do in order to set this team up for some long-term success. And I hope it's Justin Fields, like I've said. But if it's Trey Lance as well, you want to help that guy out, no matter what happens. Because, we hurt. I don't want to get into Kaepernick too much, but Kaepernick got hurt because he came in with, a pretty stacked team. And then over time, it got progressively worse. I want to keep that team as good as possible for as long as possible. I want them to constantly have that ability to go out there and compete and score points on anybody every single day.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Twisted Eva. Really do. You're definitely one of the spotlights when, that watch our show here. What about Mac Jones? I feel like you're trolling this, my guy.
That's
with
the
Mac
same troll
Jones.
from last week. Don't worry.
That's fine. But yeah, we're definitely wrapping this up here. I have a dentist appointment, unfortunately, or else we would have definitely kept going, answered some more questions. But I do
Next
have
week
to go
we'll
get
be
those
here
teeth cleaning.
celebrating, hopefully. Celebrating on this show.
Celebrating.
It's a
Yes,
celebration.
because we're gonna do this every Friday at 12 p.m. Pacific time or 3 p.m. Eastern. Wherever you're part of the world, I would give out the time in say Great Britain, but hey, I don't know the time difference, so I'm not going to do that. Appreciate all of you. We'll catch you next week. Remember, 12 noon Fridays. Maybe we'll have Jason back. He had some other things going on.